Alright, hopefully you guys can see everything. I'm going to sign in under my personal account here. I keep all of my photos backed up to Intronus. I mean, Intronus is not just for photos, and those are the two scenarios that I've used. Intronus is a very powerful piece of software, and it can back up. It's great for backing up business documents. It's great for backing up Exchange servers. It's great for backing up SQL servers. It's great, obviously, as I already mentioned a few times, for backing up photos. It's great for just any type of file that you need to back up. The other thing that Intronus does really well is it can back up files that may typically be locked. It can back up locked files through the system. So, you know, if you have customers who are constantly keeping files open and other backup software can't seem to grab those files, then Intronus can, you know, it has a way of plugging in and doing that. So you can see my storage has been pretty even keel over time. But what we're going to do is run into the Manage tab. So once you've logged in, this is the portal that you should see. The Manage tab is where you can access all the different computers on your account. In this particular case, I only have one computer, so it's under this particular account. So I logged into the partner portal, so this is what you're going to see. For each customer, you're going to create a sub-account, and that sub-account can contain all their computers. So you can keep all your customers nice and organized, and you can see, you know, how much space that customer is using and how much space each machine on their account is using. So it's good for keeping track of things. We're just going to sign into this particular computer and see what's going on. All right, so we have a couple of backup sets here. Once you're in here, there's a couple of things that are going to be different if you're used to using the portal. The first one is that the backup agent will actually show whether it's connected or not. So if the backup agent's checking into the Intronus server, it's going to mark itself as connected. If the backup agent is not connecting to the Intronus server, obviously it'll say disconnected or unconnected, and the little Wi-Fi signal there will be gray. If the backup agent is currently executing a task, then that little Wi-Fi signal will be animated. It'll be moving. So you'll see that, you know, it's actually doing something. The server is communicating with the backup agent actively. So I've got two backup sets here. I created one just to kind of show you guys what's going on. So we're going to go ahead and edit this backup set. You can add a new one from scratch, or you can edit a backup set. You can also execute backups by just hitting the little play button. So if you hit play, it'll actually execute a backup. But before we do that, I'm going to show you kind of what makes up a backup set here. So across the top, you're going to see this breadcrumbs menu when you first sign in, and this shows you all the different steps that you have to walk through to get to the end of the of creating a backup set. So we have the type of backup set. Typically, backup sets are either going to be online or local. If the backup set is local, that means that you've paid for a license for doing local-only backups, and that's something that we can talk to you about if you're curious. But typically, you're going to be doing an online-based backup, and then you just give it a name. Obviously, you know, we're editing it, so we already have a name in there, but you could change that name to anything that you like, just to help you identify that backup set. Once you click Next, this is where it gets interesting. So now you're going to see a computer, which is the computer that agent is installed on. Now, if you install the agent on a computer and that computer dies, and then you install the agent on a new computer and link it back to this account, you will actually see two machines here, because the old machine, when you're creating a backup set, you may only see one, but when you're restoring files, you might see two machines, because you'll see the new machine and you'll also see all the backups that were performed on the old machine. You can also choose a network location to back up from, so you could potentially add a network path, any kind of, I believe it's UNC path, right, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah, UNC path. So you just click the little arrow on the side here, and there's arrows, and what it's going to do is it's going to show you all your hard drives on that particular machine. I happen to have a bajillion hard drives. You'll click Next, and then you can see a listing of the files on that drive. And if you're curious how fast this thing updates, like let's say you create a new folder, it's almost instant. What you need to do is just close down this editing panel, and then bring it. Actually, you could just click the back button and then click next, and it'll actually bring up the most up-to-date version of the files on that drive. So it's not like it pulls it and then saves some kind of cached copy. It's actively looking into that drive to see, what files and folders are available there. So right now we're just backing up a folder here called Intronus. Inside that folder, I just have our price sheet. I'm sure you guys are familiar, have seen our price sheet at some point in time. If not, I'm happy to share it with you. But this is pretty basic. So we're just backing up this one particular folder. You can back up just about anything. One thing that's important to note is that if you click on the checkbox next to a folder, it's going to back up, and hopefully you can see this, it's going to back up all the files in that folder. And the only reason I bring this up is because I've made this mistake a couple times where you try to expand a folder and you click the little checkbox next to it and it doesn't expand. So like if I click this backup temp folder, it's not showing me the files in there, but it's backing them up now. So you just want to be careful that you don't accidentally back up a folder you didn't mean to because you were just trying to look inside. So anyway, we'll click Intronus. We're going to make this our backup set. And then it's going to bring me to the third step where I can actually schedule the backup to run. And right now, it's backing up every night at 2 or every day at 2 a.m. every morning. So typically it's going to go 2 a.m. until it finishes, which with this particular backup set, as you may imagine, is pretty quick. When I tested it to run it, it took about 20 seconds to initialize the backup, upload the file, and shut everything off. Obviously, depending on the size of the files, it's going to depend on how big that backup is. So I'm just going to leave this pretty basic. You can add files to the schedule by clicking the Add button up here. If you click that, then you can add another time. So we could say, hey, we want to do a backup on Thursday at 7 p.m. And then we can say cancel at 8:30. So we could just say just back up as much as you can between this half-hour period, or we could just say just run till it's done and click Add. So now you'll see Thursday. Let me know if I'm going too fast for the screen here to finish. Thursday at 2 a.m. it's backing up, and then Thursday at 8 p.m. it's finishing. I said 7, but I think we did 8. If you double click on it, you can edit these backup sets. So if we push this back to 7, there we go. Now it's set to the right time.
I thought you did click 8.
Yeah. Okay. Not that it really matters, but
quick question for you, Dan.
Yeah.
Edward wanted to know what if the system's off when the backup is scheduled. What happens?
It'll skip that backup.
And it'll just go to the next day or the next schedule?
It'll go to the next backup time. So, if we want to remove one of these scheduled dates, so since we're backing up twice on Thursday, you just double click on that backup and hit delete, and then the backup is gone. So we'll go ahead and click next. This next piece is important. You need to set up. You can set up archiving rules. So by default, it's going to keep 10 revisions, 10 versions of every file that you want to save. So that means that each file is going to be 10 times, ultimately 10 times the size of that file on the server.
It's going to save 10 changes to the file. Doesn't
10
back
changes,
it up.
yeah. So it dedupes the data, though, I believe, right?
Well, this is a file-based backup system, so tonight, if you make a change to a file, you change one file, it'll back only that one file up tonight. And if your revision history is 10, it's going to keep the previous 9 copies as well. Now, when the 11th one gets backed up, it shuffles them all down. The oldest gets pushed out, and everybody else gets pushed in. So now, if you didn't make a change to a file, it's not getting backed up. So it's possible you only have one revision of a file out there if it's never been changed.
Yeah. So ultimately, it'll start building up. So, I mean, typically what you'll want to do in this screen is you'll want to click over to the Advanced Archiving. You can see I have a couple of archiving sets here. There's a couple different ways you can do this. Number one is you could say keep as many versions of this file as possible without exceeding 100 megs. So if you put this on here, every file will eventually, if you keep editing them, will eventually reach 100 megabytes in size and then fail. It won't fail. It'll delete the oldest revision.
Push out the old ones, right?
Yeah, so I'm not particularly a fan of that, but that is a way you could do it. Another way that you could do is you could say keep versions. So I have set this to keep one version of each file. So that obviously is a way to do it. By default, it'll say 10, so this number would read 10 versions, and it would apply that to all files.
And I think that's, I mean, a point we definitely don't want to under stress is this is a way of controlling the expense to your clients is by setting how many versions of a file that you need, and it does default to 10 by default. So you I think automatically want to make sure you knock that down to something less than 10. I think in most cases that's going to be too many.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is there is, when you first set up the device on the machine, there is a thing called the stray file. There's a policy that you can set on the machine itself, and I would suggest that you set that to automatically kind of go through and cull through those files every, say, at least 90 days, maybe 60 days, whatever you agree with your customer, so that you automatically delete any files that are stray, that are not attached to a backup set, have been deleted or renamed after, say, 30, 60, 90 days. And that's going to help keep your cost of storage down and usage down.
Yeah. The other thing you can do, which is really cool with this system, is we could say for all files, keep one revision, right? And then we'll add a new rule, and we'll add versions. Keep 10 versions of everything that is a .doc. We'll just say .doc and .docx. So anything that has .doc in its name, we'll keep 10 revisions of that file. So that way, we won't end up with 10 revisions of a video that's 150 gigs. And every doc file, Word document that we save, we'll keep multiple revisions of that file, so that way we have a whole bunch of revisions if the customer does something where they make a change and they want to go back. So now you're keeping, and you could do this with all, Word type files, so we could add another rule, again, for PowerPoint, and maybe another one for Excel files. So now what you're doing is keeping one version of each file for all files, and then you're keeping 10 for specific extensions. So that way, you kind of have more control over what you do. The last way you can do this is you can also say keep at least 30 days and no more than X version. So, if people make a change to a file, so let's say they like in this case, we're backing up the price sheet for Virtual Administrator. So we don't change our prices very often, but sometimes we do make some changes. So let's say we change that price sheet. It'll keep 2 revisions at this point. So we had one and we made a change, so now we have 2 versions. But then we don't make any more changes for another 90 days. At 30 days, it's going to delete the oldest revision. So then there will only be 1 on the server. And again, you can do that for specific files. So we could say .pdfs, which is what this price sheet is. This rule would apply to PDF files. So that's sort of the archiving. This is something that's worth playing with and getting used to. Basically we're still on the settings tab for setting up this backup set. So that's the archiving rules. The next thing you need to know is that you need to pick a temporary folder on their hard drive. So hopefully this is something that you already know, and maybe this is something you want to wrap into the process of installing Intronus. When you first install Intronus, you may want to create this folder, because if the folder does not exist, or if Intronus cannot create this folder, it will just say backing up, and it'll eventually fail, and you'll end up with backup failures all the time because it can't spool the files to push them up to the web. So this is a folder that you're going to want to keep around. And make sure that it exists.
And you need space.
And you will need space on the drive to do it.
So if you're running out of space on your hard drive, you're going to have trouble, because it's going to use temp file space to grow it. As it needs that to kind of zip this stuff together and compress it and work with it. So
yeah.
Couple quick questions.
Sure.
Ed had some more questions. And in the archiving side,
Uh-huh.
there's no reason or way to have an exclude filter there, right? I know that we can do exclude filters in other places,
I'm pretty
but
sure you
not
could.
here.
I'm not sure if this would work, but oh no, it won't. All right, it was worth a
Yeah.
shot.
No, but
Yeah,
I
there's
think
really
there
no
is a
way to
place.
exclude it.
There is a place where Edward, there is a place where you can tell it to exclude like temp files and things like that. This is strictly archiving. There's a place to not even have it back it up, so you can exclude it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's something that you can do through the web portion. That's something you may have to set up on the agent itself.
We'll have to look at it. Yeah, we can play with that. And then the other question that he had was, if you make a change, let's say you've already got the backup set, and you go and you make a change to that backup set, is that backup set going to now run the new rules? So everything will now kick in with the new rules, right?
Um, That's an interesting question. I believe that old backups will still run under the old rules, and then the new backups will run under the new rules. So what you'll want to do is go into, and I'll show you this in a moment. Once you create the new backup set, you may want to go into the delete tab, which we'll talk about in a second, and just remove the old backups from the system so that they're not interfering with the new backup set. Well, not necessarily interfering, but they're not taking up space on the server at that point.
Okay,
So
so you don't think it'll start, like, I mean, if you start excluding or setting a new policy,
new
like for
revision rules.
XLS or something, will it automatically archive from that point on with that backup set?
Well, like the
We
edits that I'm
can look
making
into
right
that a little
now,
bit.
yeah, I may need to take a look into that and make sure that I have the right answer. Um, but my understanding is that it's going to it won't make changes to files that have already been backed up to the server. Like it won't apply the new rules to those files. It'll apply them going forward.
Okay.
I think that's more of a safety feature so that you don't make a mistake and accidentally delete all your backups off the server. But I'll double check on that and make sure that I have
All
the
right,
right answer. Yeah,
we'll
we'll
look
get
into
back to
that
you.
and get back to you on that. All right, we'll keep going here.
Um, the the last three pieces here are pretty simple. There's a snapshot mode. So snapshot mode uses the VSS service from Microsoft. If you turn that off, then locked files will fail typically to back up. If you turn that on, then it'll have a much greater success rate of backing up locked files. And you can also make it so that if it has a problem using snapshot mode, it'll actually cancel the backup and produce a failure. So that way you can see if there's some kind of problem with the machine. Otherwise, typically what it'll do is the next piece is failed file behavior. If it has trouble backing up a file or has trouble backing up a locked file, this will cause it to retry. And I'm not sure how many times it will retry, but it'll try a handful of times to get that file before it actually writes it off and says this file isn't coming. So it'll give it some time to kind of figure itself out, especially like if a customer has a file open and they're editing it while it's happening. Hopefully it'll be able to grab it through the locked file through the snapshot mode, but if it has a problem with that, then it'll try again a couple times. The last piece here is the archive bit. If you turn this on, then what will happen is when a file is backed up, it'll set that archive bit, and then when the backup is successful, it'll turn that little bit off. So it's a little marker it's like an earmark on the file that says this file has been backed up. So if you back up files, like if you have a backup that's failing and you're trying to figure out where the problem child is, then you could turn this on, and it'll back up all the files. All the ones that get backed up to the server will be marked, and all the ones that failed wouldn't be. So when you start that backup again, it'll start right where it left off. It's also good if you can only back up, like we were just talking about the scheduling. If you back up and you can only back up for half an hour, then you could say back up all these files for half an hour, and then the next day, start another one for half an hour, and just pick up where you left off after the first one. So that archive bit can get pretty useful for taking care of your files, especially if you have limited time to back up. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this piece off because I think that this is not what we need right now. We're going to go ahead and click Next. Once you click Next, it's going to give you kind of an overview of what you've done. So you can see that we have, we set up some advanced revisioning rules for our system. It'll show you the schedule, and it'll show you kind of what you're backing up. So in this case, the selection, we're backing up one file. It's our price sheet, and it's about a megabyte. It's the size of the file. But if your folder grows in size, obviously this would change. So I'm going to go ahead and click Update. So our backup set has now been updated. So we're going to go ahead and run this backup. And hopefully it won't make a fool out of me. Yeah, it locked me out. We spent so much time editing that backup. There we go. So we're just going to log back in, come back to our backup, and then we're going to run our backup. Boop. There we go. So the backup is now running. So this process typically takes about 30 seconds to a minute for a 1 megabyte file. I have a pretty speedy internet connection where I'm at, but it obviously would take longer depending on how much you're backing up. And you can see, I don't know how well you can see it over the web, but you can see that little Wi-Fi signal is currently animated. And there we go, the backup's done. So we've already backed up our file. It's now on the server, and we have a copy of that. So